Call of Duty World at War is one of the most influential World War II video games of all time. Though as discussed on this channel before, it is not historically accurate. This same logic also applies to its very different but often overlooked PlayStation 2 edition Final Fronts, and there is no better way to educate on the true extent of its errors than by jumping straight into correcting them all.
They sent us to North Carolina, some farm place that they'd turned into a training camp. 2nd Division U.S. Marine Corps.
The 2nd Marine Division was raised in California. By this mission setting of June 6, 1942, their basic training would have occurred at Camp Pendleton, San Diego, not in North Carolina, which is on the opposite side of the nation.
Some soldier I was gonna be.
Traditionally, a US Marine would not be called a soldier. The term soldier refers to an army personnel, whereas the Marine Corps is a part of the Navy.
Our first day in camp, and I forgot my rifle.
This does not make sense. Recruits would be individually issued a rifle with a serial number while together in camp under the supervision of an officer or NCO. They would not be responsible for bringing their own rifle to basic training, and would not be standing around with them before their commander arrives like in the game. The M1 helmets have the frogskin camouflage covers. These were only issued to Marines in theatre from late 1943 onwards. Marine headgear in training encompass overseas caps and fibre helmets. All helmets in game lack bales and chin straps. We see the Marines have thick hair under their helmets. All new arrivals in basic training had their head and facial hair shaved for sanitation purposes and to eliminate individuality. Their hair was allowed to grow back over time, but everyone here has just entered the Marine Corps, so should still have fresh cuts. There are 2nd Marine Division patches on their sleeves. Unlike US Army soldiers in the other theatres of World War II, Marines generally did not wear such divisional insignia. The Marines wear their uniforms very messily, as if they have already been battle-worn. They have open collars, completely unbuttoned tunics, and rolled-up sleeves with what looks to be cigarette packets tucked into them. Roebuck even has a piece of cloth wrapped around his leg. Doing this on base in front of inspecting commanders would certainly be one way to get chewed out. Sergeant Roebuck is the only one without a P-41, as he is actually wearing an out-of-place Army 2nd Pattern HPT uniform with Marine Corps insignia slapped on. Over the uniforms, the trainees wear a bunch of combat gear, including helmets, haversacks, belts, pouches, satchels, and grenades. They wouldn't be wearing all this when training on base. The satchels worn by a number of the men are filled with M9 rifle grenades, which Marines did not start using until 1944. The earlier VB rifle grenade would be what they used in this era. Almost all of the Marines throughout the game wear pistol belts only. The standard M1923 cartridge belt never appears. The ammo pouches on the troops throughout all factions of the game often do not match with the weapons they use. For example, almost all of the US Marines wear low poly and undersized M1 pouches for pistol and carbine mags, despite them mostly using full-length rifles and SMGs.
Hey Mac, what's the scuttlebutt on the new honcho?
The term honcho being used to mean leader here is anachronistic. It comes from the Japanese word honcho, meaning group leader. It was slang popularized and brought back to the US by servicemen stationed in Japan during the occupation following the Second World War. When Sergeant Roebuck arrives, the Marine that introduces him performs a terrible salute with a quick up and down action. The enlisted man or lesser grade officer is supposed to hold his salute until returned. Roebuck is also an NCO, not a CO, so giving him a salute in the first place makes little sense.
10 hot!
10 hot is a common Hollywood erroneous term. The proper command is attention. Also, the name overlay tells us this Marine is a private, so why is he assisting the sergeant here instead of a corporal, and why is he calling the group to attention rather than the sergeant himself?
Okay, let's see what we've got. Sound off. Turner.
Aye, aye, sir.
Polanski.
Aye, sir.
Miller.
Technical and narrative reasons sees us having a lack of allies. An actual US Marine rifle squad consisted of 9 men and then expanded to 12 men later in the war. We of course should also be operating alongside various other squads instead of just being a 5-man army. The M1 Garand appears as the standard rifle of the US Marines in-game. This did not become the primary weapon of Marine infantry until after the Guadalcanal campaign in 1943. Before then, their standard rifle was the M1903 Springfield that never shows up in-game. The M1 Garand is modelled on the later war version. During this period, it would have the earlier lock bars on the rear sights, single notch gas plug, and mill trigger guard. To give the player a bigger sight image, the developers have purposefully enlarged and reshapen the iron sights of many of the weapons. We load the rounds into the M1 without any clip holding them. When we empty the mag, an oversized clip then magically gets ejected. The rifle also fails to eject casings when firing. In typical old-school COD style, the third-person models of the guns are way lower quality than the first-person ones, with them having static bows, inadequate reload animations, and are all fired unlimitedly by the game's completely brain-dead AIs. The appearance of the M1A1 Thompson is premature since it was not introduced until October of 1942. It should instead be the earlier M1928A1 Thompson, or the M50 Rising. The sling swivel screw to the side of the grip was a British modification on Land-Lease Thompsons. It would not be seen on American-used M1A1s. The Thompson's 30-round magazine only contains 20 rounds in-game. It is depicted as a closed bolt when it should be an open bolt. All of the firearm ejected casings in-game, including for the smaller caliber SMGs and carbines as well as shell-fed shotguns, are just different sizes of rifle casings instead of the weapon's actual corresponding ones. Many of them are also in a strange grey shade instead of the standard brass colour. Our character often fails to use the magazine release button on the weapons and just rips the mags out with brute force to reload. Dated video game making sees the magazines and chambers of the weapons either always having ammo in them even when they are all shot, or are always empty with a flat blank texture even when they should still have rounds inside. There are no proper partial reload animations in the game. We always perform an empty reload by cocking the weapon, which would be unnecessary for open bolt weapons, and would outright eject the chambered bullet in closed bolt weapons, though even this fails to occur in game. As is typical in FPS games, we carry two primary weapons at once throughout almost all of the levels. Real World War II troops did not do this due to weight constraints. Far too many regular private infantrymen are wielding Thompsons. These were generally only allocated to NCOs, officers, and other specialized troops. The Mark II grenades have the olive drab paint that did not start getting applied to them until around October of 1942. For this period, they should still be the pre-war yellow painted ones. All fragmentation grenades in the game always have a fuse that lasts just 3 seconds before exploding. The fuse length on grenades varied a bit, but would rarely prematurely fail like this. The delay should be around 5 seconds long. The grenades also still have their safety spoons attached when thrown, which would mean they should not blow up. The AN M8 smoke grenades have an incorrect design that looks closer to the M16 smoke grenade rather than the actual AN M8 ones. The AN M8 produces a smokescreen for 105 to 150 seconds depending on weather conditions. The smoke from them in the game only lasts around 25 seconds. It is hard to make out at such a distance, but we can tell from the general shape and firing sound that this machine gun, which is magically firing itself, is a Japanese Nambu Type 92. The devs had to resort to using this here as the game strangely has no proper model for American medium or heavy machine guns, like the Browning M1917, M1919 and M2. This sign tells us that we are in Camp Lejeune, when as aforementioned we should be in Camp Pendleton. The sign also misspells the name Lejeune by having a G in place of the J. Although Camp Lejeune was indeed built on farmland, the facilities of the farm were mostly cleared for the construction of the military camp. The game completely contradicts this by showing the base consisting entirely of farm structures. Instead of barracks, we see a load of stables, barns, and a silo surrounded by hay bales, fields, and a tractor. Even the shooting range is just a bunch of scarecrows wearing M1 helmets that we rather wastefully shoot. This USA flag seems to be the modern 50-star version rather than the 48-star one used in World War II. The presence of F4U Corsairs is completely anachronistic for this setting. This fighter aircraft was not introduced until December of 1942, and did not see its combat debut until after the Guadalcanal campaign in February of 1943. The F4U is also modelled on a late World War II one. It has the national insignia from mid-1943 onwards, as well as the glossy sea blue paint scheme introduced in late 1944. The Navy tailcode is also a later war addition. We could not even find any Navy squadron with the code of FO. It is most likely fictional. In typical video game cinematics, the planes are shown flying at far too low altitudes and speeds. Bombing this close to the ground would cause the aircraft to blow themselves up. Also, why on earth are these fighters even here bombing the camp extremely close to the Marines? Friendly fire much? The Willys MB Jeeps have USA Army tactical markings on them rather than the USMC versions. Driving around in the background are Sherman tanks, which the Marines did not start using until mid-1943. Before then, they had light tanks like the M2A4 as well as the M3 and M5 Stuart. The training in this level is condensed to an extremely unrealistic amount. We completely skip learning the ins and outs of our weapons and go straight to live fire practice. Immediately afterwards, we perform close quarter combat maneuvers, throw live grenades, and do an obstacle course drill all within about a couple of minutes. If you spend a lot of time gaming, you probably thought at some point it would be nice to get a bit more value back from that time, even if it's just something small on the side. That's where Free Cash comes in. Free Cash is a platform where you can earn extra money or gift cards by playing games, testing apps, and completing simple tasks online. As you can see, there are plenty of different offers to choose from, and it currently holds a 4.7 star rating on Trustpilot. It's not going to make you rich overnight, but it's a simple way to earn a bit on the side over time if you're already gaming anyway. Just make sure to keep app tracking enabled on your device so your progress tracks properly and you get credited. There are also plenty of payout options once you've earned, and the minimum withdrawal amounts are very low, so you don't have to wait long to cash out. If you sign up through the links in the description, you'll get a $5 bonus to start, and from there you can keep earning as you complete offers. With thanks to Free Cash for sponsoring this video, we shall now return to the inaccuracies. We then shift to the Battle of Guadalcanal. The shown date is incorrect. Although February 9th, 1943 was the final day that the Americans declared Guadalcanal secure, the Japanese had actually already evacuated all of their forces by February 7th, 2 days beforehand. Now that we are in combat, the lack of gear on the Marines becomes an evident issue. Some of them are just wearing pistol belts with nothing on them. The M2 flamethrower appears prematurely since it was not introduced until 1944. The earlier M1 flamethrower would be more appropriate for this setting. The M2 flamethrower only had enough fuel to fire for around 7 seconds straight before needing refueling. It also has a limitation of 5 shots before the ignition system needed to be replaced. In game, it fires for 4 consecutive seconds before then just magically refueling itself for us to keep using it indefinitely. The flamethrowers are seen being used way too much to directly engage infantrymen in the open, instead of against bunkers, caves, and other defensive positions that they were designed to be cleared with. Using a flamethrower in confined corridors like this would incinerate the user as well as their targets. We get a closer look at some more, still anachronistic, Sherman tanks in this level. They seem to have a base model of the M4A3 version, but are overall a horrible hodgepodge of variants merged into one. They have the armor package on the sides and in front of the driver and co-driver's hatches that were not added on them until June of 1944. We even encounter some that have the E45 auxiliary flamethrower, which did not enter service until mid-1944. They have the White Star, which Marine Shermans did not use. The Sherman is also one of the many vehicles in the game that lack specific unit tactical markings. The American tank crewmen have the same models as the regular infantrymen, so are not wearing any appropriate tanker uniforms. The Marines keep calling for a medic.
Get a medic over here!
The term medic would usually be said by army men. The Navy medical personnel attached to the Marine Corps were known as hospital corpsmen or just corpsmen. The corpsmen we come across throughout the game all have red crosses on their helmets. These crosses were commonly hand-painted on helmets by medics in other theaters, but Navy corpsmen in the Pacific almost never did so due to fears that the Japanese would intentionally target them. The corpsmen lack much of their distinguishing features, such as the Navy-class ranks on their sleeves, yoke suspenders, and extra canteen. The SCR-300 appears as an anachronism. This radio did not first enter combat use until August of 1943.
Command says 100 at Sherman's inbound war location.
The SCR-300 was used for long-range communication on a battalion level under the command of a major or captain. This radio wouldn't be assigned to a regular infantry squad under enlisted men like this. Overall, an SCR-536 walkie-talkie would be more suitable to be used here instead. The TNT charges we use are apparently some sort of ticking time bomb. These charges did not have a ticking clock in them. They were exploded using a blasting cap and detonator. There's an extreme lack of variation among the Japanese uniforms, with almost all of them wearing white cotton undershirts. There should be higher numbers of full field uniforms, with tunics of the Type 98 and later Type 3. Although Japanese troops were allowed to wear their undershirts without a tunic, they would still have to be kept neat, unlike in-game where many of them wear them messily untucked and with rolled up sleeves. The Japanese all have the same color rank insignia that looks to be for Lance Corporal from the main game. There should definitely be more variation of ranks among them. The Japanese lack almost all of their standard gear, including the Type 99 leather belt, ammo pouches, receiver pouch, bayonet frog, taco pack, haversack, water canteen, and gas mask bag. Reloading the Type 99 rifle sees us inserting 4 badly depicted rounds without any clip holding them together. Once inserted, a 5th round then magically spawns in the rifle. All bolt-action rifles in-game are loaded to the maximum number of rounds regardless of if there is still ammo in the magazine. The Nambu Type 100 SMG is far too prevalent among the Japanese. This was a rare weapon, with only about 8,000 of them ever being produced throughout World War II. The SMG is not even the early Type 140 version either. Instead, it is the late Type 144 variant that did not enter service until 1944. And despite being modelled on the late war version, the gun has a very slow rate of fire rather resembling the earlier version. It should instead sound like this. All machine guns in-game are operated by just a single regular infantryman. In reality, they would have been allocated crews equipped with specialized machine gunnery equipment. All mounted weapons in-game have no visible ammo feeding into them, yet still somehow fire unlimitedly with no reload, cooldown, or barrel change animations. The fire rate of the Type 92 heavy machine gun is way too high. This is what it should sound like. All of the Type 97 hand grenades are missing the cord, safety pin, protective cap, and red top plate. Despite many of them not having bayonets on their weapons, the Japanese constantly perform bonsai charges at us. Contrary to what video games like this love to depict, by this stage in the war, such frantic melee attacks were disapproved by Japanese command and rarely occurred only as a desperate measure. Among the enemy positions are radios and switchboards that look nothing like any Japanese field radios commonly used in World War II, such as the Model 94 Mark VI. As in almost every World War II video game it seems, Czech Hedgehog and Dragon's Teeth anti-tank obstacles have been placed everywhere across numerous levels. These were only used in select fixed defensive positions in Europe, most famously at the German Atlantic Wall and Siegfried Line. They were never used in the Pacific Theatre of Operations. The trucks among the Japanese appear to be the Type 94. Their cabs in particular are badly modelled, with them incorrectly having the steering wheel on the left side instead of the right.
This must be Tarawa village. We need to cut through this mess and take out those AA guns.
No, it mustn't. The village of Tarawa was captured by Marines months ago back in August 1942. By February of 1943, it was deep within American-controlled territory. The level culminates with our US forces intercepting the Japanese as they conduct their final evacuation from Guadalcanal.
Look at those ships, they're bugging out. Damn! You look at that. Davidson taking off the island brigade.
We then annihilate the enemy as they do so, and witness their exfiltrating warships getting blown up by some more still anachronistic F4U Corsairs.
Tokyo Express out of action.
This is utter nonsense. In reality, with the exception of some shelling, the final Japanese evacuation of Guadalcanal on the night of February 7, 1941 went successfully and completely unopposed. Allied forces were not fast enough to intercept, as they had mistaken the Japanese warships and aircraft that arrived for the Ritroll operation to be an attacking force sent to retake Guadalcanal. As a matter of fact, there weren't even any US Marines anywhere close to the area when the evacuation occurred. The 2nd Marine Division had mostly left Guadalcanal by this stage. The nearest American units were of the Army's 161st and 132nd Regiments. The Japanese are seen oaring offshore in wooden rowboats, when in fact they left in landing craft. The warships the Japanese are seen rowing to are Aoba-class cruisers. None of these were present in this evacuation. It was Japanese destroyers of Destroyer Squadron 3 that performed this task. All of the ships in-game are seen being positioned way too close to each other and the shore. They would space out from each other to allow for maneuvering without collisions, and would be much further away from the coast to avoid beaching as well as to stay out of range of any enemy inland defences. Us witnessing the last Japanese departure indicates that we must be somewhere around Kamimbo and Visail, but in typical Call of Duty fashion, the map in the level is just a generic fictional one that doesn't exactly match with anywhere in the region, not even the faraway Tanaru village that Roebuck tried to falsely claim we were in. The following couple of levels see us at Besso Island for the Battle of Tarawa, starting on November 20th, 1943. The map in the cutscene shows the Marines attacking Besso Island from the north and south directions. However, the initial landings only actually focused on the northern Red Beach sectors. There were never any landings from the south. Additional attacks on Green Beach to the west of the island by elements of the 6th Marine Regiment did occur after D-Day, but these failed to be represented even in the cutscene of the second Besso level that takes place on D+1 November 21st. We performed a landing in LVT-4s, which are anachronistic, as the Marines during the Besso Island assault used LVT-1s and LVT-2s for the first 3 waves of landing forces. LCVPs and LCMs were used for later waves. The game lacking models for American machine guns means the LVTs do not have any armaments. Although some LVT-2s went into Besso without any armaments due to their late arrival into the Marine storage, most would have 1 or 2 machine guns on pintle mounts. The landing craft are undermanned, with just their undersized squad being inside this one. In reality, each LVT-1 carried 18 men and each LVT-2 carried 20 men. The extremely bare-bones gear on our Marines becomes even more obvious here. In such an island invasion, they would have full gear including haversacks and additional equipment. Although regular HVTs were still present, a number of Marines were also issued camouflage fatigues for the invasion, as represented in this edit by our historical artist Michael Akkerman. Once the landing craft are disembarked, they just sit there indefinitely. In reality, once the boat team disembarked, the landing craft would lift its ramp, reverse, and go back to its mothership to pick up more troops for the next waves. More F-4U Corsairs continue to appear as the only American fighter in the Pacific. Although no longer outright anachronistic, only 1 squadron of these from Guadalcanal fought at Tarawa. The majority of US planes in the battle consisted of others, namely the F-6F Hellcat, SVD Dauntless, and TBF Avenger, none of which make a presence in game.
Boys aren't even making it to the beach!
We are landing at what is supposed to be the Red Beach Tree, as apparent from the presence of the central pier located to the west of us, and confirmed later with a line from Sergeant Roebuck.
Red Beach 3 is now clear.
This means we are assigned to the 2nd Battalion of the 8th Marine Regiment. The high amount of losses among the men and Amtraks we see here is exaggerated for the beginning stage of the Red Beach Tree landing. Those of the first wave only received 25 casualties, mainly thanks to naval barrages from the destroyers Ringgold and Dashiell that forced the enemy to button up long enough for the landing teams to come ashore. No heavy casualties were suffered in the landings of this sector until the 3rd Battalion, transported by Higgins boats in the 4th wave, came under artillery fire here. Despite no US Army forces being involved in this battle, many of the American corpses we come across are wearing more Army 2nd pattern HVT uniforms. They even have rank chevrons and divisional patches, which were generally not worn by infantry in the Pacific. Our radio man also now has a 2nd pattern uniform with Army M36 suspenders and all, instead of the proper Marine M41 suspenders.
Okay, stand by, Marines. We got incoming artillery to soften them up.
The naval artillery on Besso Island occurred before the initial Marine landings, not during it. In fact, reports show that when the Marines came ashore, there was still smoke and dust rising from the island due to the earlier naval bombardments, in contrast to the clear sky we see in game. The reason that naval artillery occurred before the Marines were on the beach was because warship shells produce massive explosions, and were not guided missiles with precise accuracy. Not only are the blasts way too small and have no visible shells causing them in game, but they are also so close that they would blow the Marines on the beach to smithereens if this were to be a realistic depiction. Besso Island of Tarawa Atoll was not defended by Imperial Japanese Army personnel as shown in the game. Instead, they shall be Imperial Japanese Navy Special Landing Forces from the Yokosuka 6th and Sasebo 7th, the former of which was redesignated into the 3rd Special Base Force. We now see many of the Japanese wearing field caps when they should have Type 90 helmets in combat. Something we will notice throughout the game is the complete lack of non-combatants. Many of the places we fight through were still filled with civilians who suffered immensely from occupation and battling. Some even formed into militias. In the case of Besso, there were over 2,000 labourers of the Navy's 111th Construction Unit, and a detachment of the 4th Fleet's Construction Department caught up in the fighting. Many of them were Koreans, and some even assisted the Japanese combatants during the fighting. In the end, only about 129 of the Koreans, along with 17 Japanese, survived the battle in total and were taken as prisoners of war. Allied weapons like these Mark II grenades appear among the Axis territories in numerous levels. I am mostly willing to excuse these as captured weaponry, but cannot for here at Besso, considering the American assault on the island has just begun, and the Japanese would not have yet had the opportunity to take weapons from them.
Carter! Call in CAS to take out that net!
The abbreviation of Close Air Support to CAS did not become widely used as a formalized military term until after World War II.
Aye, sir. Tango Foxtrot. Tango Foxtrot. Baker Charlie requesting airstrike. Rich Square Free Hotel.
Tango Foxtrot is from the NATO phonetic alphabet standardized in the 1950s. And none of this even makes any sense. Most units would have a designated call sign depending on their platoon, company, battalion, and regiment. Most naval squadrons would have the abbreviation VF, not TF. So in this case, the Marine should have shouted Victor Fox and the number of their unit.
Roger that. Target in sight. Hold your position.
Okay, Marines, hold up. We'll wait for air support.
How are all our characters hearing this response? They are not modern day soldiers with headsets. Only the radio man would hear this message and have to relay it to the others. Immediately after leaving the beach, the depiction of the island and battle go off the rails, as we are tasked with destroying 2 nearby 8-inch naval guns.
Okay, we gotta put the kibosh on those artillery positions.
Out of the 12 naval guns on Besso, 4 were 8-inch ones on high concrete bunkers with an extensive interior like we see in the game. These guns were located on the southeast and southwest of the island, nowhere near the Red Beach Tree sector that this level supposedly takes place in. None of them were even captured by our 8th Marine Regiment, nor on D-Day November 20th. The guns on the southwest were captured by the 2nd Marine Regiment on D+1 November 21st, while those on the southeast were secured by the 6th Marine Regiment on D+3 November 23rd. We placed 1.5 pounds of TNT charges on the naval gun's central column. This would make a sizable explosion, but the blast in game is far too large to the point that it causes the underground portion to cave in on itself and the gun to blow into pieces and erupt in fire. Realistically, the best way to eliminate a large gun like this would be to just set a munition like a white phosphorus grenade in the breech. The plunger we used to blow up the 2nd naval gun is not connected to the charges underground, and looks nothing like the blasting machines used by US forces in World War II. The 2nd Besso level sees us fighting for the airfield on the following day, November 21st. The cutscene for this mission incorrectly labels the Tarawa atoll as Guadalcanal, a completely different island that should not have a space in the middle of its name like it does here. The depiction of the Besso airfield contains fictional parts, though there are a few structures representative of reality, the first of which is this sand-covered bunker that is positioned and likely based on the Bunnyman bunker, historical footage of which is even included in one of the game's later cutscenes. It is incorrectly portrayed with opened holes for machine guns, making it look more like the reinforced concrete ammunition storages that were utilized as emergency MG positions. How the place was cleared also differed. The sand-covered bunker is shown being dealt with by a sole flamethrower operator before getting killed. In reality, it was eliminated by 2nd Battalion 18 Marine Regiment engineers, led by Lieutenant Alexander Bunnyman Jr., who similarly was killed over the bunker during the attack and posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. They poured gasoline down his air vents to blow the place up before shooting any Japanese troops who survived and tried to escape from the bunker's entrance on the opposite side. These main locations around the airfield were captured on D+2 November 22nd, whereas this mission is set on D+1 November 21st. Our M1 Garand has by default suddenly been replaced with a Winchester Model 1897 trench gun. This unexplained changing of weapons happened several times between the levels. Although this was likely done for gameplay variety, let it be known that historically an infantryman private like our character would generally just be equipped with a single rifle throughout, and not abruptly change to a completely different class of firearm like this. The trench gun's bolt is completely static, with the hammer even being stuck in the uncocked position. The sleeve is somehow being reciprocated to the very top of the tube, well past the slide assembly cut off. Reloading the trench gun sees us somehow inserting 6 shells into the tube, which can only hold a maximum of 5 shells. It is possible to add an extra 6 shell into the chamber, though no such animation exists for this in-game. After loading them, we pointlessly pump the shotgun again, which fails to eject a shell. We are introduced to the ultimate video game trope of fuel barrels that blow up upon being shot. Doing this in reality would just make a bullet hole that would cause the fuel to leak. The Type 96 25mm anti-aircraft guns and the Type 92 machine gun on the command bunker roof should not be here. There should instead be several 13mm Type 93s in single mount and twin mount configurations. The anti-aircraft guns are seen being used only by 2 soldiers, even by just a single man if one of them is killed. In reality, these would have been allocated a crew of up to 9 soldiers to properly operate. The then newly introduced A6M5 model of Zero Fighter appears as the sole Japanese aircraft in game. Other planes, including the G3M bombers of the 755th Air Group stationed at Besso Airfield during the battle, are absent. Our Marines incorrectly refer to friendly Navy aircraft as being from the Air Corps.
Carter, get on the radio. Don't call in that favor from the Air Corps.
The US Air Corps was not even an administrative echelon anymore. It had been absorbed into the US Army Air Force as a subordinate component since 1941.
Watch out! The runway's mine!
There is no historical evidence of any minefields being on what's very likely meant to be one of the taxiways on the northern part of the airfield. In actuality, if there were to be any major obstacles here, it would be some machine guns set up at strategic locations overseeing the main runway and taxiways. Not only are there way too many of these mine signs all bunched up together, but they also contain a skull and crossbones design that does not match with the more basic mine signs with just letters that the Japanese used in reality.
Sergeant, just heard the 8th on the radio. Their guys have located the enemy HQ up ahead.
What, we gotta go bail out the 8th now?
Hold your fire! Those are friendlies from the 8th! Word is you boys found the enemy HQ.
Yes, sir.
We already established from the Red Beach 3 landings in the previous level that our squad is of the 8th Marine Regiment, and now you are telling me that we are not in that unit and are bailing them out? Come on game, make it make sense. The HQ building we attack is almost certainly modelled after the Air Defense Command Post. The actual interior of this building was also different from the game, with there being no access to the rooftop from the inside, but rather only from the staircase and scaffolding outside. The Air Defense Command Post was not secured by just simply walking into one of the main entrances and shooting through the building like in the game. In reality, the Marines had to clear a larger force inside using flamethrowers and TNT.
Get going, Miller, while there's still an 8th Division left!
There is no such thing as a US 8th Marine Division. As aforementioned, it was the 8th Marine Regiment who fought in this battle.
That counterattack didn't take long.
There are no reports of any substantial counterattacks occurring directly at the Air Defense Command Post. The only major counterattack that occurred around this time happened during the night between November 22nd and the 23rd against the 1st Battalion of the 6th Marine Regiment's defensive line. Our position is assaulted by Type 97 Chiha tanks, which the Japanese did not have on Tarawa. Only 14 Type 95 Hagos were reported. The mission objectives incorrectly refers to the Type 97 Chihas as Chi-Nu tanks, as in the Type 3 Chi-Nu, which was a rare late-war tank that was never used in combat operations. To fight off the tanks, we used the M9A1 bazooka, which is anachronistic to appear here, considering it was not put into service until mid-1944. Even the earlier M1 bazookas were not yet in use for this battle, largely due to logistic setbacks within the Marine Corps in the Pacific. The Polaroid T90 optical reflector sight has an incorrect cross reticle that does not match with its actual viewfinder one. All rocket launchers in-game are reloaded by just shoving a rocket into the tube. We completely neglect to attach the wire from the box near the rear to prime the rocket. Every rocket launcher is also shown being used by just one man, when in fact they would be allocated a team with a dedicated loader. Either the bazooka is very underpowered or these Chihas are exceptionally strong, for it takes at least 2 rockets to eliminate them. The M9A1 bazooka could penetrate more than 100mm of armor, over twice the maximum armor thickness of these Chihas. In typical video game fanfare, the vehicles always completely blow up and turn into charred, distorted wrecks when destroyed. Only something like an ammunition explosion could cause such a large blast as this, and those were not all that common. The bazookas are often seen being used by our allied NPCs to fire at obstacles, including this bunker which they make a big hole in it with. Bazookas were primarily designed to penetrate armor, not blast apart reinforced concrete. Such fortifications were specifically made to take this kind of punishment. The 6th Marine Regiment arrives to support us with Shermans. Although this tank's appearance is finally not outright anachronistic, they should be the M4A2 types for this battle. Stuart tanks were also involved, but of course are never seen.
It's Battalion, Sergeant. They say enemy resistance on BDO is finished. The island's ours.
Fighting on Besso continued until the island was declared secure at 1:30 p.m. on November 23rd. The battle did not end on this level's date of November 21st, nor even when the depicted airfield structures were captured on the 22nd. The following two missions see us at the Battle of Saipan, beginning at 8 p.m. on June 15, 1944. The first level's cutscene shows the Marines invading the island's eastern side when in fact they landed in the southwest. June 15, 1944 saw the moon in a waning crescent phase rather than the waxen gibbous phase seen in game. There is a downed B-17 flying fortress on the beach. None of these were known to have attacked or crashed on Saipan. The invasion of the island instead saw much of the aforementioned smaller Navy carrier-based fighters and dive bombers used. The B-17 has tactical markings and a two-tone coastal command paint scheme of the British Royal Air Force. It would make more sense to have United States Army Air Force markings with a bare metal finish or olive drab color. The first half of the level has us at the shore going on the offensive to capture a Japanese bunker and trench network. This does not match up. The Marines landed and made a beachhead during the daylight of June 15th. Afterwards, in the night, they were dug in and defending their positions. The second half of the mission sees us fighting off an enemy counterattack, which did occur.
Word is the enemy has launched a hell of a counter-assault. Looks like they're gonna be coming right through here. We need to hold this position, Marines.
A force of about 2,000 Japanese troops came from Garapan to counter-assault the Marines, focusing largely on the position of the 2nd Division 6th Regiment. They did not start arriving at the American lines until 10 p.m, whereas this mission takes place a couple hours before this at 8 p.m. The game shows the counter-attacking infantrymen to be of the Imperial Japanese Army only, when there should also be special naval landing troops present. For some reason, the already too prevalent field caps on the Japanese have suddenly disappeared in this level, leaving many of them wearing no headgear at all. The armor the enemy soldiers are accompanied by are more Type 97 Chihas, which did not partake in the attack on this night. It was Type 2 Kami and Type 95 Hago tanks of the Imperial Japanese Navy that did. The counterattacks were not beaten back by just Marine infantry with small arms and bazookas along with naval shelling as shown here. There was also American ground-based artillery and a large amount of armor like M4A2 Shermans and Stuart variants, none of which appear. The counterattack also lasted throughout the night and into the early hours of the following morning. It did not end after a mere few minutes on the evening of June 15th as shown here.
What now, Sergeant?
Now, Polanski, we take that mountain.
Oh really, Sergeant? And how would you know we were going to that exact mountain a week before the attack actually started? And especially before the Japanese forces had pulled back to that area? High Command might have known that Mount Tapachau was a later objective in the battle, but a lowly sergeant would not know this or think to comment on it so far ahead like this. It seems the game is back to just portraying generic fictional landscapes. The depiction of Mount Tapachau in particular looks nothing like its real-life version. The second Saipan level brings us to Mount Tapachau at 11 AM of June 25th, 1944. The cutscene for this shows another map of Saipan. The two arrows on the right are now in about the correct position, but this one to the left is not. There were no landings here to the far southeast.
The enemy still held the summit of Mount Tapachau. They were dug in tight up there, defending artillery emplacements that had ranged in on our positions. Somehow, those guns had to be silenced.
Mount Tapachau was used by the Japanese as an observation point for artillery, not to place the artillery itself. Mount Tapachau was captured by the 1st Battalion of the 29 Marine Regiment. This unit had only recently been formed in 1944 and was seeing its first combat in Saipan while temporarily attached to the 2nd Marine Division. Our squad should not be here doing this considering that they are from an original regiment of the division.
Who's that over there? 27? Jeez, looks like those guys are catching hell.
At this time, the 27th Infantry Division sector was indeed next to the Marines at Mount Tapachau. Instead of giving the soldiers proper army uniforms, the developers have clearly just reused the Marine models for them, with their P-41s and frogskin camo helmet covers. We finally see some M1 carbines among the Marines. Judging from the color, they have birchwood stocks, which did not become widespread until after World War II. During the war, M1 carbines dominantly featured black walnut stocks. There was not a massive fight for Mount Tapachow like the game shows. The 29th Marines crawled up the eastern slope and successfully captured the summit without a single loss. The Japanese didn't start attacking until they realized that they were about to lose the mountain, so they sent a few men in a failed attempt to get rid of the 1st Battalion's recon team. More Japanese arrived after the 1st Battalion already secured the summit, but also ended up getting decimated.
He's hit! Get out of there!
Didn't stand a chance. Once the fuel tanks hit.
It seems no media depiction of the flamethrower is complete without this tired old myth. No, the tanks of a flamethrower would not spew flames and explode after being shot, even if it was hit by incendiary rounds. This is because the tanks contain gel-like napalm that is difficult to ignite and compressed nitrogen that is not flammable. The fuel tanks getting shot would simply result in pressurized nitrogen venting out and the flamethrower would be ruined. If the devs wanted to depict a more realistic way of the operator getting killed by his flamethrower, then perhaps they should have instead shown the pressure tank getting hit, as that could cause a sudden release of pressure that has the ability to send metal fragments into the user, kinda like when you shoot a soda can. The Type 99 light machine gun only now appears in small numbers as the final gun of the Japanese arsenal in-game. Other common weapons like the Nambu pistol, Type 38 rifle, Type 11 and Type 96 light machine guns, as well as the Type 89 grenade discharger fail to make a presence. The Type 99 LMG's fire rate is too slow. It should sound like this. When we arrive at the non-historically present artillery pieces in the mountain, we see that they are incredibly out of place German Flak 88s. Roebuck even refers to them as 88s.
The enemy's dug in across this whole damn mountain. Hell if they didn't go up there and hide a couple of 88s.
The Japanese did not use any 88mm howitzers in World War II. The only cannon of the same caliber that was utilized by them was the Type 99 88mm AA gun, but even these were only deployed around the Japanese home islands.
Okay, we've done our part, Marines. The summit's clear for the 27th.
The summit of Mount Tapachow was captured on the evening of June 25th, whereas this mission takes place in the morning at 11 AM. We now switch from Private Joe Miller of the 2nd Marine Division to Private Lucas Gibson of the 80th Infantry Division in Elbruck, Luxembourg during the Battle of the Bulge. As we will go on to show, the cutscenes maps of Europe are subpar. We see that the German Hakenkreuz in them and everywhere else in the game have been censored by either being removed or replaced with an Iron Cross. The American soldiers wear M1943 jackets and buckle boots with brown wool M1937 pants. Although we also see M1943 pants later in the game, the still common M1941 field jacket and Type 2 service shoes with M1938 canvas gaiters never appear. In addition, we do not see any of the melted wool overcoats that would be worn in such freezing temperatures. Some of the M1943 jackets are actually just green retextured M1942 paratrooper jackets. Rank chevrons were standard for army men in the European theatre of operations. We should definitely be seeing chevrons on these soldiers corresponding to the ranks that they are shown to have on their name overlays. They all have fingerless gloves, which were not standard to US troops. Some may have field modified their gloves to cut out the trigger finger, but that's about it. The US soldiers all wear pistol belts, many with rigger pouches on them. These were mostly worn by airborne paratroopers, not regular infantrymen. The army soldiers lack a bunch of common gear, encompassing helmet nets, first aid pouches, haversacks, and entrenching tools.
Baker Company are pushing up with the tanks. You think they're gonna take this town without help from us, Tucker?
Hell no, Sarge!
Then we're going in, starting with an assault on that house up ahead.
During this level setting of 4 PM on December 23rd, 1944, Able and Baker companies of the 1st Battalion, 318th Regiment, 80th Infantry Division were fighting in Edelbruck, though they ceased their attack at 5 PM and pulled out upon nightfall. It was not until the night of the 23rd and morning of the 24th that E and F companies of the 2nd Battalion performed a successful assault on the town with armoured support. Said armour support did contain Shermans of the 702nd Tank Battalion, but there were also tank destroyers present of the 808th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Despite us commonly fighting enemy armour, no tank destroyers appear in the game. Even though they have been in the snow-covered low countries for numerous days now, none of the vehicles in-game have any snow camo. As to be expected at this stage, the depiction of Edelbrock does not match with reality. Judging from the direction of our attack and the positioning of the town itself, the bridge we have taken cover on here is the one over the Alzette, which was not as small as it is portrayed here. The river was quite wide and not frozen over too. The town itself also swoops down into a valley, but in game the town seems to be in a flat area. Despite being a standard issue weapon since the start of the war, the M1918A2 Browning automatic rifle only now makes an appearance as the final small arm of the game's American arsenal. In addition to the earlier recommended weapons, we do not see any other common firearms like the M1911 and M3 grease gun. The BAR is incorrectly depicted with a charging handle that reciprocates when firing and seems to magically move itself back and forward when reloading. Due to their models having been given a strange bleached discoloring, the helmets on the German hair or army soldiers are an inaccurate silver shade instead of the proper field grey coloured matte texture. The Stahlhelms also heavily lack common additions like camouflages applied from the use of vehicle paint, lime, covers or foliage. A large number of these enemies have full-grown beards. Even in the field, military grooming discipline standards would have prevented this amount of facial hair going unshaved. Far too many of the Germans are wearing white winter parkas. Although some were issued these, most just wore their standard wool greatcoats in winter conditions. We see on the ones without the parkas that they have an inaccurate mix of the M42 and M43 uniform. They all lack breast eagles and Waffenfarbe, with the shoulder straps being in a black shade like the Waffen SS ones. We should instead be seeing proper depictions of a variety of uniforms in different shades of field grey, namely the M36, M40, M42, M43 and M44. None of the Soldaten wear their tunics with the collar closed. They all have them open, showing what appear to be toques. These were commonly worn in winter conditions, but would usually be pulled up around the head rather than just wrapped around the neck as in game. Despite their lack of rank insignia indicating them all to be privates, every single German has an Iron Cross ribbon, which they incorrectly wear over a tunic button instead of properly through a button loop. The Germans all wear both MP40 and Kart 98K pouches, as if they are wielding two primary weapons, which they do not do in game and almost never did historically either. They are all wearing black leather jackboots instead of the more common low boots and gaiters. The Heer troops completely lack all of the gear usually worn on the back, including the mess kit, Zeltbahn, gas mask can, canteen, bread bag and entrenching tool. The visible strikers of all bolt-action rifles in the game are static. There are too few Kart 98Ks and too many MP40s among the Germans. The MP40 would only be allocated to COs, NCOs and sometimes assistant squad leaders. The MP40 is incorrectly depicted as a closed bolt weapon when it should be open bolt. The closed bolt SCG-44 is incorrectly depicted as an open bolt weapon. The MG42 has a way too slow rate of fire. This is what it should sound like. The Model 24 steel hand granaten still have their safety caps attached when thrown, so should not explode. Panzerschreck rocket launchers are seen being used by the enemies to fire directly at our infantry, in stark contrast to the anti-tank role that these weapons were intended to be used for. The Panzerschreck appears as the final small arm of the game's German arsenal. Other common firearms like the Luger P08 and Walter P38 pistols, Gewehr 41 and 43 rifles, MG34 machine gun, Model 39 and 43 grenades, as well as the Schießwecker and Panzerfaust launchers are never seen. The Americans fighting in Edelbrock encountered murderous enemy artillery and mortar fire. It was reported that among the surrendered German force was almost a battalion of artillery, yet none of this is encountered in the level. German reinforcements arrived with Opel Blitz trucks and a Panzer IV. This would be unlikely as the rest of the division had cut the main road west. Forward units of the 10th Armoured ran perpendicular to the Soar River, cutting the highway east, and there were no main roads that go north. Many of the German vehicles have the earlier war plain field grey paint scheme. By this stage they should be painted in dark yellow with mixes of green and browns in different patterns such as dot line or ambush types. The Panzer IVs appear to be chiefly modelled on the Auf J, but like the Germans, they are overall a hodgepodge of different variants. They are a bit out of proportion, with the muzzle brake being slightly too long and wide than normal. The same can be said for the hull itself. The front is slightly too straight, while it should angle downwards. The camouflage patterns they all have also look too bright, using a bright tan instead of a dark yellow as the base.
Yeah, well the good news is we tied down at least 2 crowd divisions, and it sector?
In the Edelbruck sector, there was only one German division, the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division, along with elements of the Führer Grenadier Brigade. Admittedly, the 79th Division was also attacked and left in a state of chaos by the 80th Division. However, the 79th were positioned far west of the town and tasked to defend the Heide Schreibergrund Bridge, and made no attempts to relieve Edelbruck.
That's 2 divisions that won't be reaching Bastogne. So, Baston's where we're headed to next.
What? No. The 80th Division remained in Luxembourg for several more weeks and never went to Bastogne in Belgium. We now switch to an alternative tank commander character, Sergeant Alex McCall of the 4th Armoured Division, to relieve Bastogne on December 25, 1944. The cutscene for the mission incorrectly positions Bastogne so far west that it might as well be in Brussels. The 4th Armoured Division did attack Bastogne from the south with a spearhead of Shermans from the 37th Tank Battalion, but they were also accompanied by armoured infantry with half-tracks. The only friendly infantry we see in-game are a small few 80th Infantry Division soldiers running around, which as aforementioned should not be here. The game has attempted to give us a first-person view of our sergeants sticking out of the turret hatch. An actual commander would never do this in combat, however. For their own safety, they would button up and use the periscopes and vision blocks within the cupola. Our coaxial machine gun has a too fast-sounding rate of fire. This is what it should sound like. In typical video game fashion, the tanks are seen operating way too close to each other. Doctrine would see them more spaced out from their friendly tanks and engaging the enemy armor at much larger distances of hundreds of meters apart. The tanks we fight in this level consist of what has to be an entire division's worth of Panzer IVs along with a Tiger I. The Germans didn't have many Panzer IVs and definitely no Tiger Is in the southern sector of Bastogne. The vehicles that were reported were mostly Stugs. Despite fighting in extremely close ranges, it takes 2 to 3 shots to destroy the Panzer IVs, even from side or rear shots. The 75mm Sherman can penetrate 100mm of armor from these ranges, and their shells have over 60 Gs of explosives inside. After one shot to the side, these Panzer IVs will be easily destroyed. The Tiger tanks are for some reason always missing the rear side skirts. The main German infantry in the southern sector of Bastogne consisted of paratroopers from the 5th Fallschirmjäger Division. None of these are seen in game, however, with only air forces being present. You guessed it, the southern sector of Bastogne is badly depicted in game, with a ridiculous amount of German defences. Not only are there loads more Czech Hedgehog and Dragon Teeth obstacles, but there are also even a bunch of concrete bunkers. The mobile nature of the Ardennes offensive meant that the Germans did not have the resources and time to build such extensive fortifications. They instead mostly just had simple dug-in field positions around Bastogne. P-47 Thunderbolts are seen blowing up the bunkers with precise accuracy. Not only do bombs not actually fall from them, but they are also all carrying fuel tanks throughout, which by this point should be dropped to remove the excess mass and minimize the risk of igniting the fuel from ground fire. The P-47s have the Normandy invasion stripes on the wings that would have long been removed by this point. The P-47's tactical markings and checkerboard engine cooling indicate that they are of the 78th Fighter Group. By December 1944, the 78th Fighter Group were switching out their P-47s for P-51 Mustangs. While it is possible some might have retained their P-47s, since most of the missions conducted by the 78th Fighter Group were fighter sweeps or bomber protection, it's unlikely they'd still use P-47s for close air support missions. We once again switch perspectives, this time to a British Private Tom Sharp of the 6th Airborne Division.
The Yanks were bogged down in Bastogne, so we went in to give Jerry a fright and soften up their defences for the Yanks' 4th Armoured Division to break through.
No, you did not. The British 6th Airborne were tasked with defending the Meuse River at Denon and Manor, well over 80 kilometers away from Bastogne. The cutscene's map of the Battle of the Bulge is just laughable. Bastogne is still pinpointed far too northwesterly and is now also misspelled as Bastonge. The arrows representing the advance of the Axis and Allies, as well as the boxes that are assumedly supposed to be blocks of German positions, do not even come close to reality. Not only does the presence of British 6th Airborne paratroopers in Bastogne not make any sense, but neither does the presented date of December 28, 1944. Bastogne was already relieved by the US 4th Armoured by this point. Most of the British paratroopers are wearing Mark III helmets of regular army soldiers. Some of them do have more appropriate helmet steel airborne troop, though they are worn bare. Most of them should have netting and scrim on them. Sergeant Maddock has a beret when he should have a helmet in combat. The beret is not even correct as it is a plain brown one. British airborne berets were in a maroon colour and had a cap badge. The Davidson smocks look bad. The colour tones are off and the camo pattern is also wrong. The real smocks would look like this. Low poly airborne patches are seen on the smock sleeves. These would be on the battle dress beneath the smock, not on the camouflage smock itself. Many British troops in the Battle of the Bulge were issued white snow camo smocks and trousers. We should be seeing at least some of these among them in the game. The troops are missing many parts of the 1937 pattern web equipment, including the haversack, entrenching tool, water bottle, mess tin and bayonet. Too many of the British, including the privates, are wielding Sten SMGs over the more common Lee Enfield rifles. The model of Sten in the game is the Mark II, when it should be the Mark V variant for our paratroopers. Parts of the Sten, including the ejection port, bolt spring, as well as the mag housing spring and plunger are completely missing. The casings are ejecting out of the bolt handle area rather than from the ejection port further to the front. The fire rate of the Sten is too slow. This is what it should sound like. We carry American NA M8 smoke grenades. They should instead be British made ones like the number 77 bursting, number 79 emission and number 80 bursting smoke grenades. Our fragmentation grenades are more accurate mill bombs, though their spoons stay attached when thrown, which would render them inert. The Mills bomb concludes the entire 3-weapon arsenal that the British troops have in the game. Other common firearms like the Enfield No. 2 Mark I and Webley Mark IV revolvers, scoped Lee Enfield rifle, Bren LMG and 2-inch airborne motor never appear.
Jerry's been using Bastogne Town Square as a supply point for their armor units here. That armor's the reason why the Yanks are having such a hard time breaking through.
Typical Jerry. Always well prepared. He's probably got enough ammo and fuel stacked up to keep him in business here for months, hasn't he?
Not after we're through with him, Taylor. While the Yank assault keeps Jerry busy, we're gonna infiltrate in, take out their forward outpost, and then move to Town Square.
I'm sorry, what? The entire 101st Airborne were stranded in Bastogne for just over a week, and now the Germans are already in the town square? Is this a siege within a siege? As you have probably put together already, this mission is complete fiction. Also, it is painfully obvious that the British troops were voiced by Americans putting on dreadfully imitated accents. Yet again, the depiction of Bastogne does not match with reality. The most obvious out-of-place structure is a windmill, none of which were located in the town. A pathetic attempt was made to recreate a German radio station here. We see it contains no less than 3 Turn EBs, one of which is wired to a microphone, which makes no sense considering these were radio receivers that could not transmit audio. Another one of the Turn EVs is for some reason connected to an American BC-348. This was a long-range radio used primarily in Allied aircraft. How and why would German infantry have this? It would be incompatible with their radios. There are a couple of 5-watt senders and a speaker that are ridiculously undersized. This radio to the right is likely supposed to be a Panzerfeld FUF transceiver, though it is for some reason wired to one of the miniaturized 5-watt senders instead of, say, this speaker. This radio here is the outright ahistorical one we saw among the Japanese in earlier missions. And finally, these radios lack the additional storage units for the batteries, cables and spare parts that they would usually be set up with. We can somehow load the sniper variant of the Kar-98K with a stripper clip even though the scope is in the way. This level continues its trend of butchering radios by now presenting us with a miniature version of the American SCR-300 among the Germans. The tanks of this German motor pool are being serviced and defended by regular air infantry only. The Panzer crewmen are nowhere to be seen. One of the British paratroopers plants American TNT charges on a Panzer IV. A British anti-tank explosive like the No. 75 Hawkins grenade would be more suitable. We have to shoot the charges to explode them.
You'll have to hit them with a sniper round to set them off.
Proper Hollywood logic this is. TNT was designed to be stable and not explode without a proper detonator. We can pick up and get a closer look at the Panzerschreck here. We see it is missing its rear sight, with our character aiming it by just shoving his face against the blast shield. The following level brings us to the Battle of Boer at 5:30 PM on January 4th, 1945.
We'd done our bit at Bastogne, and we're pulling out of a place called Boer to rendezvous there with our CO, Captain Randall. Yeah, trouble was, we didn't know it at the time, but the Germans were retreating in that direction as well.
This is more utter BS. As stated before, the 6th Airborne was nowhere near Bastogne, and the Battle of Boer was part of the British efforts to clear the western area of the Bulge. It was a British counterattack, not a German retreat. Once again, the map in the cutscene fumbles by placing the village of Boer further west into Belgium than it really is. The mission starts with us arriving at the village in jeeps, but by the level's date of January 4th, the Battle of Boer had already been going on for over a day, and the 13th Parachute Battalion of the 6th Airborne was dug in half of the village while the Germans held on to the other half. No reinforcements arrived like this on the 4th of January. All of the jeeps our British paratroopers use have Special Air Service insignia on them. Although some personnel of the Belgian 5th Special Air Service were involved in this battle, they never actually entered the village on this day. Yet again, the game's version of Boer does not match with the real-life village. No SDKZ 251-23 half-tracks were used in this battle. The German armour that defended Boer consisted of Panther tanks. In this Boer level, as well as the following one set in Vessel, the SDKZ 251-23 half-tracks feature the insignia of the 21st Panzer Division on them. This unit was not involved in either of these battles. It was the 2nd Panzer Division that fought in Boer and the 84th Infantry Division who defended Vessel. The explosive we plant on the half-track is a cartoonish time bomb consisting of just bundled TNT sticks and a small clock. Such a device was never used by the British Army in World War II. There are a bunch of American P-47s and German Focke-Wulf 190s dogfighting in the sky and providing close air support. These should not be here. Air support was not called in due to adverse weather, as well as to not risk friendly or civilian fire occurring from the close proximity of the fighting in the village. The mission ends with our forces fleeing the area in jeeps. This does not add up. The Battle of Boer lasted until the 5th of January and saw the British forcing the Germans out of the town. While driving away, we spot a modern-day road sign for an uneven road. The next mission sees us at the German city of Wesel. Yet again, we should not be here. The 6th Airborne did not actually fight in Wesel, but landed and fought several miles north around the town of Hammenkellen. The shown date of March 28 is incorrect. Wesel had already been taken by British commandos on the 24th of March. The presented time of 5 AM also does not make sense. It would still be dark at this time of year in Germany, in contrast to the bright sky we see in the gameplay. This jeep among our paratroopers has American markings on it instead of British ones. The representation of Wesel yet again does not match with reality, especially with the level of intactness it has in game. Prior to capturing Wesel, the Allies heavily bombed it, to the point that around 97% of the city was destroyed. The Flak 88s are seen being used by regular air infantrymen rather than the Luftwaffe flak artillery crewmen who primarily use them in reality. The Flak 88s and this 21cm Nebelwerfer 42 are also illogically placed among wrecked buildings that would limit their arc of fire as well as cause debris and dust to get kicked up from the firing. We even see a German firing the Nebelwerfer while standing directly behind it. Nebelwerfers were fired remotely using a wire, since the backblast would incinerate anyone sitting close by. The level ends with us destroying 2 Tiger 1 tanks that should not be here. There were no heavy panzer battalions that fought in this battle. We switch back to our American Private Lucas Gibson of the 80th Infantry Division for the next mission.
Everyone had Berlin in their sights. The Blue Ridgers were no different. But we ended up being deployed south into Austria. Last battle of our war would be at a place there called Brunnen am Inn. Division HQ had reports of a last-ditch concentration of German troops around the town and sent us in to investigate.
Braunau am Inn was taken by the US 13th Armoured Division. The 80th Infantry Division merely passed through the town a couple days afterwards. The cutscene maps continue to be cooked, with Braunau am Inn being misspelt as Brau am Inn. The title card shockingly states the level to take place on the 7th of February 1945. What? We just established we were across the Rhine. That happened on the 24th and 25th of March. So we've jumped back 6 weeks but are suddenly in Austria already? No. Braunau am Inn was secured on May 2nd, 1945. Many of the US soldiers in this level have no headgear for some reason. Despite being well into spring now, many of the Americans continue to wear scarves and gloves, while the Germans still all have winter head toques around their necks. You guessed it, the map looks nothing like Browndown Am In. The level opens with us moving into the town from the south by crossing a stone bridge over a small river. In reality, the Americans crossed the much larger Inn River located at the north of the town, via the destroyed Imbrucha and later a pontoon bridge that engineers built afterwards. The amount of combat we face in this mission is extremely exaggerated. It is clear that the devs fabricated this whole level just because they wanted to have a big cool battle in the birthplace of the Führer. In real life, there are no reports of such heavy combat occurring anywhere here. As we press further into the town, the game decides to just abandon all its remaining credibility by having us end up fighting through ridiculously expansive concrete bunkers that lead to a missile site in the process of launching V2 rockets. Just no game. There are absolutely no V2 launch sites located anywhere near Browndown Am In. This facility contains a bunch of post-war looking stuff, including these maps of the Greater Germanic Reich that seems to be based on modern ones with distinct colours and a legend. A period map would look like this. Waffen-SS propaganda posters appear in the rocket site. These will be put in towns and cities for civilians to see, not in a military facility. Speaking of them, ever since the summer of 1944, the Waffen-SS gained full control of production and deployment of the V2 missiles. Despite this, we see none of their personnel anywhere within the launch installation in-game. We use TNT charges to blow up a V2 rocket, and the blast it produces is pathetic. It does not even have any effect on the rocket itself or its surroundings. Each V2 contained just shy of 1000 kgs of amytal explosive. This place should have been engulfed by the blast. We switch back to our US Marine, Joe Miller, to take the Shuri Line and Castle of Okinawa on 3 PM of May 28, 1945. By the date of this mission, the 2nd Marine Division was not redeployed on Okinawa yet. There was a demonstration group of the division deployed to Okinawa on April 1st at the Minatoga beaches in the southeast, as a diversionary for the Japanese forces to assist the main American landings at the Hagushi beaches on the west. After that, they were stationed as a floating reserve unit until its 8th Marine Regiment was finally deployed later in the battle and attached to the 1st Marine Division on June 15th. Yes, after the American forces had captured the Shuri Line and Castle already.
So, this is the Shuri Line. What a dump.
Yeah, Pulaski. This stands between us and the last Japanese position on the island.
Roebuck is referring to the Shuri Castle here, which the game puts massive emphasis on being the final major objective on Okinawa.
Okinawa had been turned into a fortress island. At its center was Shuri Castle, an actual medieval royal fortress. Shuri was important to the Japanese military, and psychologically, it was the key to the island's defenses, and a symbol of Japanese power and pride. If we took it, so the thinking went, we'd take Okinawa. We'd do that, and the door into Japan would be open at last. One more hard push, and we'd finally be within sight of the end, and the road to going home.
This is completely untrue. Shuri Castle was fully secured on May 31st, and the Battle of Okinawa did not come to an end until June 22nd, over 3 weeks afterwards. The members of our squad have been fighting for well over 2 years now since Guadalcanal, successfully eliminating an insane amount of enemies akin only to games like Call of Duty. Despite this, not a single one of them has received a promotion. This depiction of the Shuri Line is lacking, with the place being too intact. In reality, most of the land and vegetation on the southern part of Okinawa was utterly devastated from the weeks of constant harsh shelling, bombing and fighting. The town and villages of Shuri are also completely absent. We should be seeing the rubble and charred remains of the wooden buildings. The next and final mission sees us at Shuri Castle itself. The shown date of May 28, 1945 is incorrect. American forces approached the Shuri Castle on May 29th and fully captured it on the 31st. As already established, our 2nd Marine Division character should not be here. It was the 1st Marine Division and later the Army's 77th Infantry Division that secured this sector. Similar to the main World at War game, the portrayal of Shuri Castle does not come close to matching reality. Just like its surrounding area, the castle was devastated by several days of shelling and bombing prior to the arrival of US ground forces. We should be in a bunch of rubble with some remains around, like the Okinawa Engakuji Temple, Okinawa Normal School, Benzaito-do Building, and Methodist Church. Instead, the developers present us with a far too intact castle that is clearly based on its modern reconstruction from the 1990s. 1990s, rather than even the era-appropriate version that had been in a state of despair since the late 19th century. Judging from the compass, we're approaching Shuri Castle from the southern side, but the castle layout we see from here is close to how we should see it if we're approaching from the northern direction and advancing to the south. Company A of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment started their attack from the ridge that lay at the eastern edge of Shuri. The battle for Shuri Castle is extremely exaggerated in the game. The main force of the Japanese 32nd Army had already retreated from the area towards the south. During the time that the 1st Marine Division and 77th Infantry Division secured the sector, only small sporadic fighting occurred, mostly against elements of the Japanese 24th Division and some other units that stayed behind as rearguard forces. We begin to see numerous American BC-348 radios within the enemy positions. Its presence made no sense among the Germans, and the same can be said for the Japanese. When we arrive at the courtyard in the middle of Shuri Castle, we see that there are a bunch of AA guns in it. Not only is there no trace of evidence to suggest any AA guns were used here, but their placements also just do not make sense. Their arc of fire would be very limited by the surrounding buildings. And so we are left with a total of just under 300 inaccuracies. For more, click on this video covering the even more erroneous Call of Duty 3. Massive thanks to fellow researchers FeReise, K-Nyne, Davidson, Michael Akkerman, as well as editor Ashton for their integral help in making this video possible. Of course, thank you for watching. This has been the Frosty One, out.